Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Meg, I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and this is Dish and Nutrition. So if you've been on this planet for any length of time, you've most likely dealt with emotional eating at one point or another. Eating can bring often immediate effects of bliss, of comfort, of distraction, and so this makes it such an easy go-to coping mechanism for when we're dealing with those emotions that we really may not want to be feeling in that moment. Now, using food as a coping mechanism to distract us from our emotions every once in a while may not have an impact on us, but if this is one of our go-to or our favorite ways to help us work through more difficult emotions, this can have a negative impact on our health in the long run. Also, the other issue with emotional eating is it never actually solves the problem we're trying to solve in the moment. Your emotions will still be there, and sometimes even more intensely after an episode of emotional eating than if you were to try other coping mechanisms in the first place. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about why we eat emotionally and what changes you can make in your routine today so you can more effectively work through your emotions and build healthier coping mechanisms into your day-to-day life. Now, before we dive in, I'd like to go over the differences between physical and emotional hunger because these often get confused, and this is a really important point when we're talking about emotional eating. So when it comes to physical hunger, this looks like a developing hunger over time. It's a gradual buildup of that hunger sensation. And when we're feeling physically hungry, we have a desire for lots of different food groups, not just specific particular cravings. During our meal, and especially towards the end of our meal, when we're experiencing physical hunger, we have that sensation of fullness, and this is a cue for us to stop. We can stop eating pretty easily, and we feel pretty satisfied after a meal. There's also no negative feelings, or very rarely any negative feelings after a meal once we're done with physical hunger. Now, emotional hunger, on the other hand, looks pretty different, so let's go over what that looks like. When we're feeling emotionally hungry, this is something that can come on pretty suddenly and abruptly, and that's because oftentimes when we're emotionally hungry, there's an outside trigger that's contributing to that. So maybe a stressful work event or a fight with your partner can bring on the feelings of sudden hunger. Oftentimes, this hunger is also accompanied by really strong cravings for something pretty specific. And I find with my clients, they're often craving things that are filled with sugars or salt or fat, or those kind of hyper palatable treat foods that we tend to associate with comfort eating. A lot of my clients also deal with the lack of sensation of fullness and sometimes even binging when they're experiencing emotional eating. And because of this, this can lead to feelings of shame and guilt after we do emotionally eat, which is pretty different from physical hunger. So if it isn't already obvious, emotional eating is something we do to distract ourselves, whether it be from anger, from loneliness, from sadness, from boredom. There is an endless amount of reasons for why we may turn to food during times of uncomfortable emotions and uncomfortable feelings. Now, let's dive into some of the ways that you can curb emotional eating so you can more effectively handle those uncomfortable emotions. And the biggest tip that I like to give to a lot of my clients is, it probably seems pretty obvious, but find other healthier coping mechanisms. So some of the common ones that I find can be really helpful for people are things like deep belly breaths to help reset your nervous system, meditation to help clear your mind a little bit, yoga to get more into your body sensations, and things of that nature. And while a lot of this advice can be really helpful, I find that this advice can be a little bit overplayed. And it's not that it's not helpful, because it absolutely is, but I'd also like to go over what I've noticed is a bit more effective advice, and advice that actually kind of gets to the root of the problem because it's actually dealing with the emotions properly as they're coming up. And this emotional regulation technique has just 4 steps. It's something that therapists use a lot of time with their own clients when they're dealing with processing really difficult emotions. So let's go over those 4 steps. First is to simply notice the emotion and notice what's going on in your body as you're feeling said emotion. This is often best practiced with non-judgment and observation, and it's often used a lot of time in mindfulness techniques. It's kind of the basis of mindfulness. Step 2 then is to take inventory of this emotion and name it. So Sometimes it can be difficult to identify an emotion you may be feeling, so down below I will leave a link to an emotional wheel to help you do so. This is a technique a lot of therapists like to call name it to tame it, and it's based on research that shows when we name an emotion, it takes the power away a little bit from that emotion so we can more easily tame it. This is a powerful step because it allows us to explore the emotion without trying to force it to go away, which can often cause more problems than it does help us. The third step is to check in on what function or purpose the emotion is serving you. If you're dealing with anxiety, is your body simply trying to keep you safe? Are you feeling ashamed, which is what's bringing up feelings of guilt? Really, all emotions are simply just feedback. And this feedback can help us navigate the world around us. Now, step 4 is the last and final step, and this is to practice acceptance or take action. So an example of quick action you could take to deal with, say, less anxiety is to focus on creating maybe a to-do list. If that anxiety is surrounding all of the things you need to get done for school or for work, jotting down a to-do list and getting a lot of those thoughts out of your brain can be a really helpful way to practice taking action. Acceptance could also look like understanding that anxiety can be a part of life. It's not always a bad thing. And when we care a lot about something, say our grade in class or our performance at work, it's normal to feel a certain level of anxiousness because we care about our work. We care about what we're putting out into the world. So if this technique is something you'd like to use, I will be leaving a link down below to a really simple printout that you can work through when you're feeling the trigger or the need to eat emotionally. And it's going to go through these 4 steps to help you more easily work through that emotion that you might be dealing with. And remember, emotional eating is not something we need to completely eliminate. I don't think you can actually totally separate emotion from food. It's just such an intertwined thing, and it's normal to do this every once in a while. This is not about perfection. This is not about never emotionally eating again. This is just about taking a little bit more control over our emotional state so that we can be the healthiest version of ourselves. So I hope you found today's video helpful. I look forward to reading your comments down below on how you found these tips to be, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye-bye.